Esther jump. Outside the car stood a frail old woman with tears in her eyes. The old woman was a poor widow who spoke in a trembling voice, asking for a little help. Instead of feeling sorry, Esther felt angry that the woman had touched her car. She swung her car door open and shouted, "Go away, old woman!" "Don't bother me," the old woman begged quietly in Yoruba, but Esther wouldn't listen. In a burst of anger, Esther raised her hand and slapped the old woman hard on the cheek. Welcome to Royal Beat Tales, a home of interesting stories. Esther sat in her shiny car on a hot afternoon, stuck in a big traffic jam in Lagos. Horns were honking loudly in the busy city street. Esther was 26 years old and came from a rich family. She was used to getting what she wanted, and she did not like to wait. People in the city knew Esther for being rude and mean, but her parents never believed them. Whenever someone complained about Esther's behavior, her parents would shake their heads and say, "Our Esther would never do that." They loved her so much that they thought she could do no wrong. As she tapped her fingers angrily on the steering wheel, she had no idea that a single moment that day would soon change her life forever. The street fell silent for a moment after she had slapped the old widow. A few people nearby saw this and stared at Esther in shock. The old woman held her face and looked at Esther with sad, angry eyes. Speaking in Yoruba, the old woman said slowly, "Continue to slap." Esther did not understand those words. Esther gave the woman a cold glare, then got back into her car and drove away as the traffic began to move. But Esther did not know that at that very moment, something unseen and terrible had started to follow her. The next morning, Esther went to work as usual, thinking nothing of the event in traffic. She walked into her office still feeling a little annoyed, but ready for the day. Her boss, Mr. Aide, came over to her desk looking upset. He had heard that Esther had been rude to a client the day before. "Esther, we need to talk about your behavior," he said firmly. Esther opened her mouth to reply, but before she knew it, her hand flew up and slap! She struck her boss right across the face. A loud gasp filled the office. Esther's eyes went wide. She had not meant to do that at all. Mr. Aide held his cheek in shock and anger. "You're fired!" he shouted, his voice shaking. Esther felt tears in her eyes as she gathered her things and hurried out. Her heart pounded with fear and confusion. She kept asking herself why she slapped him and what was wrong with her. Esther had lost her job in an instant, and she felt that this strange trouble was only just beginning. Esther drove away from the office, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. She felt scared and upset after losing her job. She was not paying attention as she sped down the road. At a busy junction, a police officer blew his whistle and signaled her to stop. Esther pulled over, her heart still pounding. The officer, a tall man in uniform, walked up to her car. "Madam, you were driving too fast," he said sternly. Esther nodded nervously. "I'm sorry, sir," she managed to say, trying to keep calm. But as the officer scolded her for speeding, Esther felt that strange itch in her hand again. Before she could stop herself, she opened her car door and— slap! She slapped the police officer right on his face. The officer staggered back, holding his cheek. He was shocked and very angry. Immediately he grabbed Esther's arm and pulled her out of the car. He put handcuffs on her wrists. "You are under arrest for hitting a police officer," he yelled. Esther's eyes filled with tears as a crowd gathered. She was taken to the police station. Now she was in serious trouble, and she still did not understand why she could not stop slapping people. She feared what might happen next. That night, Esther sat on a hard bench behind the bars of a jail cell. The cell was cold and dark, and she felt all alone. Esther hugged herself and cried quietly. She thought about what had happened. She remembered the old widow she slapped on the road. The woman's Yoruba words echoed in Esther's mind. "Continue to slap." Esther began to realize that the old woman might have put a bad curse on her. She remembered people said that if you hurt an old person, their curse could become real. Now Esther was very afraid. What if she really was cursed? Early the next morning, Esther's parents came to the police station. They were worried and confused. Her father talked to the police and paid some money to get her released. When Esther stepped out of the cell, her mother rushed to hug her, crying. Her parents did not understand why Esther would slap a police officer. On the drive home, they sat in silence. Her father finally spoke up softly. "Esther, why did you do it?" But Esther had no answer. She just looked down at her hands and shook her head. Esther wanted to tell them about the old woman, but she was too ashamed and scared. She felt a dark cloud hanging over her, and she feared it was not going away. Little did she know, even more terrible events were still to come. A few days later, Esther's older sister came to visit their parents' house, bringing her newborn baby. The family gathered in the living room to see the cute little child. Esther's mother and father were very happy to meet their first grandchild. Esther tried to smile too, but inside she was still very nervous. She stayed a few steps away, afraid of what she might do. Her sister noticed Esther was quiet. She gently said, "Esther, are you okay? We heard about what happened. You should be more careful." Esther felt embarrassed and upset. She opened her mouth to reply, but before she could speak, her hand suddenly swung out. Slap. Esther slapped her sister across the face, even as her sister was holding the baby. Her sister cried out in pain and almost dropped the baby. The baby started wailing loudly. Esther's father quickly took the baby from her sister's arms to keep the baby safe. Esther's mother rushed to her older daughter's side, shocked and angry. "Esther, how could you?" she yelled, her voice trembling, but before anyone could stop it, Esther's hand struck out again. Slap! She slapped her mother right on the cheek. Her father ran to grab Esther's arms, but slap! Esther hit her father too. Now Esther had done the unthinkable. She had slapped her own sister and even both of her parents. The entire family stood frozen in disbelief and pain. A terrible silence fell over the room, heavy with shock and fear. Esther burst into tears. She fell to her knees in front of her parents, crying, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her sister held her red cheek and cried softly while rocking her frightened baby. Esther's mother touched her own face in shock, and her father's hands shook with anger and fear. Through her tears, Esther began to explain. She told them about the old widow on the road, the one she had slapped in anger. "The woman said something in Yoruba after I hit her," Esther cried. "She said, 'Continue to slap.' Ever since that day, I can't control it." Esther looked at her parents with pleading eyes. "I didn't mean to slap any of you. My hand just moves on its own." Her mother gasped and held her chest. She understood now that this was not normal anger. It was a curse. Her father closed his eyes and nodded slowly. He knew that in Yoruba beliefs, hurting an elder could bring a terrible curse. "We have to find that old woman," he said in a trembling voice. "We must ask for her forgiveness and find a way to break this curse." Esther's mother and father helped her up. They decided to go at once to the place where the incident happened. They hoped and prayed that the old widow would still be there and that it wasn't too late. With hearts pounding, the family rushed out to search for the old woman, not knowing what they would find. It was late afternoon by the time they set out. The sun was hidden behind grey clouds, and the air felt heavy with worry. Esther and her parents drove to the busy street where the slap happened. They searched around, asking anyone if they had seen the old widow. Finally, they found another beggar who knew her. He was an old man sitting on a tattered mat by the roadside. Esther's father hurried over and asked, "Please, sir, the old woman who was here a few days ago, do you know where she is?" The beggar looked at them sadly. "Grandma Iyabo," he replied, using the name he called her. "I'm sorry. She passed away yesterday." Esther felt her heart stop for a moment. "Passed away?" she whispered. Tears filled Esther's eyes as she realized the old widow was dead. Esther's mother covered her mouth in grief, and her father looked down at the ground, his face pale. The old woman had been their only hope to save Esther. The poor woman had died, and Esther would never be able to say sorry or beg her forgiveness now. Esther felt a terrible guilt fill her heart. Was it her slap that caused the old woman so much grief that she died? Esther began to sob loudly on the street. Suddenly, in her sorrow, Esther felt that cursed urge again. Without thinking, she rushed towards the old beggar, her hand ready to slap him too. But this time, Esther's mother was watching closely. She grabbed Esther's arm just in time, stopping the slap from landing. The beggar jumped back in fear. Esther's father thanked the beggar for telling them and gave him some money before sadly leading his family away. As they walked away, the truth sank in. The old woman who cursed Esther was gone forever. Their only hope to break the curse had slipped through their fingers. That evening, Esther and her parents sat quietly in their living room, their hearts heavy with sadness and fear. The house was filled with sadness. Esther still felt the strange itch in her hand, as if she might slap someone again at any moment. The curse hung over them like a dark cloud that would not go away. They had lost their only chance to ask the old widow for forgiveness, and now they did not know what to do. Esther's mother held her hand tightly, afraid to let go. Her father bowed his head, whispering a prayer for help. But no answer came. They were alone with the terrible curse. Esther's father thought about finding a powerful elder or priest who could help break the spell, but even that hope felt far away. As night fell, tears rolled down Esther's cheeks. She realized that her life might never be the same again. The family huddled together, scared and sorrowful, wondering if the widow's curse would ever be lifted. No one knew the answer. In that quiet, sad house, the family could only hold each other and cry as the night grew darker around them. Esther's curse remained, and no one knew if the morning would ever bring an end to it. They stayed awake, huddled together and afraid of what the next day might bring. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment for more interesting stories.